where we should follow the money in Africa, please feel free to let us know. Now, returning as our guest this week is a former minister in the government of Yoweri Museveni's in Uganda, Minister Zoe Bakoko. Welcome back on our show.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Milton. Good afternoon, viewers. I'm glad to be here again this afternoon.
And you were the Minister of Gender, Labor, and Social Development.
Yes, I was.
From 2001 to 2006, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And one of the portfolios included the National Social Security Fund.
Under the Labor Department or Ministry, yes.
And tell us something you found out. You found out that a considerable amount of money was being hemorrhaging, and then you did something to block this hemorrhage, and then what happened? And how much was hemorrhaging?
$5 million equivalent was hemorrhaging from the National Social Security Fund when I took over the ministry.
On a monthly basis?
On a monthly basis. And indeed, I plugged all those holes where the money was hemorrhaging. And when I did that, of course, I instituted a 22-member committee, which included the ministries of labor, finance, and independent people, including IMF and the World Bank and DFID.
To put in a system that people stop stealing this money.
That's right, and so I call that...
Now, for viewers who missed the first show, please tell us, first of all, how you discovered this money was being stolen, and by whom?
Of course, when I was appointed the minister in charge of Gender, Labor, and Social Development, which also covered the National Social Security Fund portfolio, the president invited me...
General Museveni.
Yes, a few weeks later, together with the Attorney General, the late Honorable Francis Ayume, to State House, and he pulled out a letter which he says was written to him by the security agents, and they discovered that $5 million, that the money was hemorrhaging, and it was used actually to sponsor the opposition
candidates and political parties
in the 2001 elections.
So you wanted you to see what really happened and to stop this?
Yes, to identify who these people were and why the money was given to the opposition. And on our way out, of course, my brother, elder brother, Honorable Francis Ayume said, "You better be careful, my sister, because you will, in the end, find out that all these things go back, they trace back to the boss." And which meant the president, Museveni. And I was like, if I don't investigate and do what he asked me to do, I'll be in trouble. And if I do it, I'll still be in trouble. Okay. But the better option is to do it and work on it.
Okay, and that's what you did.
That's what I did, and that's how I found out that $5 million was hemorrhaging every month.
Now, I think we should try to maximize the use of our time this week. Last week, you did tell us that when you stopped the hemorrhaging of the $5 million a month, the fund grew up immediately in terms of the submissions within 3 months' time.
That's right, within 3 months' time.
But then you had a lot of pressure. People started coming and pounding on your door and asking for the money, including members of the first family.
That's
true. Please elaborate on that.
When the money started growing, of course, when I plugged that hole, then in 3 months, the money, the monthly collections grew to $6.5 billion, which was proof that $5 million was being stolen.
Right, 6.5 billion Uganda shillings.
Shillings, which was equivalent to $6.5 million dollars.
Right.
And so what happened was the money continued to grow, and then I started being pressurized by members of the first family. Salim Saleh invited us, me and Onegio Bell, to his home.
Salim Saleh is the brother of President
Yes, the president, several times, and saying, please, he wants money to do his programs. And I said,
would he be alone in this setting? Would he be there? And
the three of us. That's right.
You, and tell viewers who Onegio Bell was.
Onegio Bell was the person whom I appointed as the director, the chairman of the board.
Of the National Social Security Fund.
Yes, after the ones who had been involved in
the siphoning of the money. You put them on suspension.
I had put them on suspension. And Onego Bell, I didn't just handpick him. He was actually vetted by Museveni's security people. And I remember Tumukunde, Brigadier Tumukunde, even testifying.
Who was involved in heading the intelligence.
Yes, testifying in Parliament when I was being roasted by the Parliament, that they were responsible and they were the ones who actually vetted Onego Bell, and my role was just to sign the document.
So they approved his appointment?
Yeah, they did.
Now, when you and Onego Bell...
And at the time, he was also an advisor to President Museveni on economic matters.
Okay. So when you and him met with General Salim, Museveni's brother, at his residence, would it be, what was the setting? Is it a dining? Is he serving you food? Are you sitting in a living room? What is the setting?
They just put chairs under a tree outside and you sit on the compound.
Under a tree?
Sometimes you sit in his living room. That's it. It's not dining, it's not eating.
Tell us some of the things he would say in terms of asking for the...
He said, Minister, you are the richest minister in this country. And if you were to call any of these people, like the business people, they will come running, because all the money they use for their businesses comes out of the Social Security Fund.
Okay.
But I said, I don't know where the money, the physical money is. All I know is that I take the political leadership and the policy. And so I don't know where the physical money is. So I can't give him what I don't know where it is.
But you said he invited you a number of times.
He did.
Would he ask in different ways? What would he say all these times?
All these times he would say he needed the money. He needed money.
How much would he ask for?
Well, when I said I didn't have the money, he didn't tell me.
How much he wanted?
Because I'm sure that the money he needs was not small amounts.
So long as you were minister, as far as you know, he never got any money from this National Security Fund?
Not as far as I know, because...
Well, you were the minister.
Yeah.
What about other members of the first family?
I remember also the office of the First Lady sending the assistants from her office with cheats to me, and then telling me that...
You mean notes with the writing?
Yes.
And what would they say?
She would say that, I'm sending so-and-so to come and explain to you. We need resources. That, yes, so that we can run the programs.
Would they state the amount?
No, but the issue is also, again, that the First Lady has money which she should use for her programs. So she shouldn't be asking ministers for money.
You mean she has money already allocated by government for her?
Her office has funds.
And then who would write these notes?
Of course, she would write them and send the assistants and say, please, can you...
And would it be signed?
Yeah.
And people, obviously, some copies of these notes must be available somewhere in Uganda.
Probable.
Interesting. Any other members of the first family?
Well, there was one son, too, of the president that I know.
Not the one who is the commander of the
he
special...
has many kids. He has very many kids, unofficial kids.
You mean the president?
Yeah, and this one particularly was working with Major Kakoza Mutale. His name was Hakim.
Who heads the militia. What is his name?
Hakim.
How do you spell that?
Hakim.
And what would he want?
He would come and say they want money to do their programs. That's how they put it.
And you would say?
I don't have the money because my ministry is the poorest ministry. And then he would be like, NSSF has a lot of money. He said, that's workers' money. I don't know where it is.
So you were actually defying the first family. And you did not think this was risky?
Well, if I had to do my job effectively and protect the funds which belong to the workers, I believe that it was worth taking the risk.
You were standing up for the workers to preserve their retirement fund, and that's why you decided to step.
Because many of them were not receiving their money, and that was very sad. Yeah.
And you said, actually, just remind viewers who missed, you discovered that these funds were being siphoned in a very interesting way.
Yes, and we discovered that the money was being siphoned and banked up abroad. They called it the Channel Islands. And I think, it's supposed to be offshore accounts, which nobody can actually it's very sad because if
and you said a business associate of General Salim Saleh was involved in doing that.
That's right. Even in other...
But before that, you discovered in an accidental way when somebody showed up to your office, right? Could you remind viewers?
There was a lady who was married to one of the workers in Kakira and whose husband had worked for 50 years in the factory. And after he retired, the management of NSSF actually paid him 500,000 shillings, which was like $500. And that was, the woman said, no, I cannot believe this. My husband has gone blind because he was working in the factory and he worked 50 years
contributing to the fund.
And contributing to the fund. So why should he be paid 500,000 shillings? And I mean, this is a woman who had never gone to school, but she was able to understand that this was not the net amount which her husband should receive. So she came to my office and complained, and I took the check and kept it, and I asked my secretary and personal assistant to call the fund managers. So the chairman, the corporation secretary, and managing director came to my office. And then I asked them, you know, after we exchanged our pleasantries, I told them to sit down, and I asked my staff to bring them tea. And then I asked them, hypothetically, if somebody works for over 50 years in a factory setting,
how much would they receive?
At a management level, how much would he be getting as a terminal lump sum? And they told me that the minimum would be 5 million Ugandan shillings, which actually translated to about 5,000. And then they said...
US dollars.
Yes, US dollars. And then they said if his job was uninterrupted, he could get between 15,000 to 20,000, which was US dollars, which was like 15 million to 20 million Ugandan shillings. And so I asked them, how did you come to that amount? And so I gave them a marker and a chart and said, can you please write this down so that I understand, because I'm a nurse. And so they quickly went and explained it, wrote it down. Then after that, I said, are you sure about this? They said, yes, they are.
So you had caught them actually, you caught them in a trap.
3 times, and they said yes. So I pulled my drawer and pulled out the 500,000 shilling check and said, but why did you pay this guy only 500,000? And they were like, oh, Minister, we can change this. I'm like, what? You can change this? How would you do that? And they said, well, we can change that. What about those who have gone without their money being changed?
Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to leap forward a little bit. You ended up suspending the 3 senior
yes, I did.
Of the fund. And who were they again?
They were the chairman of the board, the managing director, and the corporation secretary.
And who are their names?
I won't be able to remember.
Okay, that's fine. That's no problem. People know who they were.
They were, yeah.
So they were suspended. But then they started lobbying to get their job back, you said. And who did they go to lobby?
Well, my understanding is that they had connections with the State House and also my boss, the Vice President, and my boss, the Prime Minister. And so they went and started lobbying. But what they didn't also know was that the president had given me 2 people from his office to work with. So I was not doing all this on my own. And of course, the information kept on trickling back to me, how they were lobbying to get their jobs back. But I had also already instituted a forensic audit to look into all the fund, the programs of the fund. And so it was not easy. The forensic audit showed a lot of mismanagement.
Or theft.
Yes.
So what you did was actually you interrupted the theft by instituting these measures that allowed the funds to start getting what it was entitled to on a regular basis.
Yes. For me, it was building an institution.
For the country.
Not for the country, for the fund first. So that even if I wasn't there, this fund would have structures which would protect it.
Which is still the case today.
Which is still the case, because Even after that, I instituted and the strategic transitional group, which I said earlier, the 22 member, and they developed a policy document and plan, which is still there to manage the affairs of National Social Security Fund.
Now, Madam former Minister, you said $5 million were being siphoned on a monthly basis, and you said a business associate of the
General
Salim Saleh, the brother of the
Kato.
president, was involved in this siphoning. So this is what it appears you interrupted, and perhaps this was why General Salim was inviting you to his home on a regular basis, trying to get you to change your mind?
Yeah, the thing is, when I plugged all these holes, of course they could no longer get access to the fund and put their fingers on it. And so they thought that they could invite me or write sheets to me so I could be compromised. But I didn't allow that to happen because I knew that if I got compromised, I would put my head on the chopping block. If I refused, I would still be at risk. But I was better off at risk for refusal than being compromised.
And doing what you think is the right thing.
And doing the right thing.
Now, this chit business where they write notes and send it to the minister, so are you suggesting that this is something that number one occurred?
Business.
Normal business? Oh,
yeah,
so it happened before you were the minister?
Yeah, it happened before I was a minister. It happens with other ministers in different ministries.
So do you have the impression that the minister before you went along with this chit?
Well, I don't know, but the money was siphoning.
The money was
going. So I don't know why it was going.
So people can use their own judgment.
Yeah.
The money was going.
Yeah.
Okay, now, at some point, there was pressure on you to remove control of the National Social Security Fund and put it under the care of a different ministry. Tell us a little bit about that. Because that's what ultimately happened, correct?
That's right. Minister of Finance didn't have enough resources. They were not collecting enough revenue. But they could see the National Social Security Fund now growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And they had a huge problem, which is even there up to today, with the government pension for the government workers. And so what they wanted was to bring these two pension funds together so that they could have the opportunity to use the National Social Security Fund.
Isn't that improper?
It is very, very improper. It's
Explain.
Actually, it's not right because...
Is it even allowed legally?
No, it is not.
Okay.
It is not because the government fund is different. It's from people who work under government and their monies are collected under Ministry of Public Service. And any other person in the informal sector, their funds were being collected under National Social Security Fund. The only people whose monies would go into National Social Security Fund are those who are unionized, like the nurses, the teachers. Some of their contribution would go under National Social Security Fund.
Now, whose idea was this, and who was applying this pressure? And when was it ultimately moved to finance?
The fund was moved in 2004, around October. And the president was going out. He made sure he wrote a letter to me to say that the fund, he had authorized the fund to be removed without asking for my opinion or my side of the story.
Who lobbied was that his idea, or did he work in conjunction with other?
He was working in conjunction with the Ministry of Finance. It was ultimately,
and who was the minister at that time?
was ultimately his decision because a colleague minister had no authority to take money from another senior minister.
Right. Was the minister Kutesa at that time, or was it? Who was the Minister of Finance?
I think it was Minister Sendaula.
Sendaula. And then Kutesa became the minister later for Finance.
Yes.
And tell us what happened once the money became under the control of the Ministry of Finance.
As soon as they transferred the money, and they deliberately knew that this was going to be a fight between the union, the workers, the Federation of Employers, and government. Because these are the three people who manage that fund. And so they took advantage of that for a whole year. The president decided, as the fund was transferred, the board was abandoned.
So there was no board
so there
monitoring,
was no
supervising
board, nobody supervising that
funds.
money. Yeah, for over a year.
Nobody was protecting the workers' retirement fund.
No. The board they decided to appoint did not even have the workers' representatives
on the board.
And yet the workers' representatives are essential because they are the ones who monitor how their fund is being
So do we know what happened to the fund during that 1 year that there was no board?
A lot happened. That's why, again, you remember a few years later, there was the problem of Temangalo, where the money had been used by Honorable Amama Mbabazi and
the Prime Minister.
And Mr. Nzei, who is supposed to be a brother to the president. They had a business where they bought a land in Wakiso, the Temangalo saga, which you have heard about, which Parliament deliberated on and said, you know.
Could you explain to viewers not familiar very briefly what actually happened, what was wrong about it, and how it was resolved?
What was wrong was actually it would be a conflict of interest for a minister to be involved in purchase of land using National Social Security Fund
money.
But I mean, Museveni.
And you said Minister Mbabazi.
Yes, and the president was very clear on that. It's there in the papers that no one should witch hunt Amama Mbabazi because.
In other words, he's untouchable.
He protected him. He protected him even though he knew it was wrong.
And you know for a fact
because the members of Parliament raised that issue and they were
they knew it was wrong too.
They knew it was wrong.
So some people are untouchable.
And so he threatened even the caucus. And so there are those, he is the godfather. And so therefore they become untouchable. Yeah.
So who's the godfather?
The president.
Okay. So this would not have happened if the money had still been under your supervision.
If it had remained in labor and they had all the people, the workers' representatives, the Federation of Employers' representatives, and if it was somebody